Spencer.
Joe, nice to see you. Looks like we've
Yeah,
got a good group today. Thanks
awesome.
everyone for joining. We'll go for about 60 minutes here. We are going to discuss this concept of a skill, and I'll show you some variations of skills that you might bump into, and then we'll build one together. And is agnostic to the platform that you're using. As these things evolve, most platforms have the ability to use skills, and you could always hack together a skill even if you don't have that. So I will do my best to jump around to different platforms so you get kind of a flavor for how you can integrate skills into your platform of choice. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to have Daniela, if you could just monitor those for me and make sure I get to questions. Joe, you can do the same.
Okay.
So for those who, as an introduction, for those who don't know me, my name's Spencer Burton. I'm the CEO of CRE Agents and a member of the AI Edge team by ACRE. AI Edge is a community of real estate professionals that are leaning into AI. So AI Edge is very much a training vehicle where we help you get the skills that you need. And then Joe sits on the AI Edge side with our enterprise group. So we're working with enterprise to train teams. On the Siri Asian side, what we do is we allow people to get the benefit of AI without actually having to learn AI. So if you think about AI Edge being the learning side, and certainly everyone on this call is likely more on the learning side. CRE agents, we focus on delivering AI without having to learn AI. And so that's either through a self-serve platform where we just we teach AI to perform tasks that are very common in commercial real estate. We're at about 50 tasks right now that AI does, and we add new tasks almost every day. But then also on the training, on the enterprise side, we build custom AI solutions for enterprise. So, I mean, two examples this week alone. We're building a platform that is effectively a virtual general manager for a hospitality platform that does all the busy work, so that the actual GM focuses on customer experience. And then for an institutional shop that does due diligence questionnaires. So they're constantly raising capital, fund five, six, seven, eight. And every time they do that, they've got dozens or hundreds of due diligence questionnaires that in the past would have taken them hours and hours and hours per questionnaire. And we built an AI engine that, in essence, feeds them the first pass of the answer and takes what used to be 20-hour task per DDQ and takes it down to about 2 hours. So anyway, that's what we do on the AI Edge and CRE agent side. Really nice to meet everyone. Let's get into the presentation. Now, here's what's cool is everyone who joins here, I'm gonna pass around at the end a ebook, and that ebook we developed, and I'll just flash it up so you can see what this ebook is. Yeah, it looks something like this. And this ebook is a synopsis of what we're going to go over today, uh, but in quite a bit of length here. So if you feel like you're falling behind, don't worry, we'll circulate this. This is 36 pages. Here's what's cool. This ebook is essentially a skill that teaches you, a human, to build a AI skill. And so you might think of an AI skill as exactly the same thing. So in the same way that I created this ebook to teach you something, and I created this workshop in order to teach you something, an AI skill, in essence, does the same thing. You pass knowledge from yourself or your team to AI, and you use an AI skill to do it. And oh, by the way, that ebook can also then be turned into an AI skill that can teach your AI to create skills. Now, keep in
Hmm.
mind, Claude and ChatGPT, the two kind of generalist platforms we're going to look at today, have pre-built AI skill builders inside them. But if you want to refine that, you can literally hand the ebook to, say, Claude and say, turn this into a skill,
Hmm.
and it will do it. And then you will have a skill builder skill. Okay. So, that's a good way to think about skills. It's me passing knowledge along. Now, um, uh, in an AI context, when do you use a skill versus a prompt? And I think this is a big confusion for folks. So if you're in our AI Edge community, you would have seen this morning the team put out a daily AI prompt standard amortization schedule. And what this prompt does is it instructs an AI, call it an AI agent or call it an AI coworker or whatever. It instructs it to build or create an amortization schedule. And we'll actually show some iterations of this. And in a way, this prompt is both a prompt as well as a skill. And the reason it's a skill is because they inject some methodology, if you will, into the prompt. But it is incomplete. No offense to the AI Edge team. They did a great job putting this prompt together. And we don't yet have an AI skill library. And so it makes sense that inside the prompt, it was necessary to inject some skill components in order to produce some output that would be rational. But you might think of a skill as some standard process or methodology that you go through to do something, and you want to encode that in AI such that anytime it does that thing, it always follows that process, or it produces the output in that way that you want it, or ensures that it follows specific rules. And the prompt, I like to think of it as a task. The task or the prompt is less about the methodology and the standards or more about the what is going into it, what do I do now, such that I could use a skill across a whole variety of prompts. And so an example, let's use an example of this amortization thing. Okay, so the team put together a prompt that is, in essence, it creates an amortization schedule. Well, here's the problem with this prompt. It takes a empty Excel workbook and turns that into an amortization schedule. And that's fine. And that's good. But what if I have an existing Excel file? And what I want to do is I want to take that existing Excel file. Maybe I've underwritten unlevered cash flows, and I want to now bring in debt. And in order to bring in debt, I want to follow a standard methodology. And so I might have a different prompt for that versus, hey, let's create something from scratch, but the skill would remain the same. Here are my inputs. Here are my outputs. These are the cash flows I want. I may or may not stipulate the formatting of those cash flows. And probably I wouldn't, because in some cases, I may want my cash flows to go horizontal. In other cases, I may want them to go vertical. But the skill encodes the methodology. The methodology is things like start with time zero, always build 360 periods, make it dynamic to term. Those are the sorts of things that you encode into the skill, and then that skill can be used across tasks, task being the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. So that gives you an idea. Now, here's what's cool. This presentation here that you're looking at, these slides, were developed 100% by Claude. Now, why did I use Claude? Because I'm going to show you now the skill that ultimately produces these slides. Okay, so if I pull open let me just open a Claude window real quick. Yeah, where's that? I had one ready. Here we go. Okay, so here's my Claude. And if I came in here and I said, create a 10 slide deck that teaches people about the AI Edge, browse the web for content. Okay, so I give it a prompt. It's a very vague prompt. This is the task that I want it to do. Now, as soon as, see this, read the PPTX skill for best practices. Claude automatically guesses, and I'm going to use that term guesses, creates an educated guess to inject the skill. Now, what skill is it using? Claude actually posts its skills online. And so if I come to its Git here, actually, that's not it. Where is it at? There it is. Anthropic skills. And here, PPTX. This is the skill that Claude opened in order to perform this task. And that was one of many, many, many tasks that we might use this skill for. Now, if you dig into how the skill is written, and for some reason it's giving me an error here, too many requests, whatever that means. On your side, you should be able to, if you Google Claude PPTX skill GitHub, I don't know what happened there, but you can come in and actually read the skill and see how Claude teaches its AI to build PowerPoint presentations. And therefore, the quality or lack thereof of your presentation is going to be directly related to that skill. Now, many of you might have used Manus. Manus has better presentation development capabilities. And part of that, I believe, is the skill that Manus wrote for its presentations. Part of it also is the method that it uses. Claude actually writes Java in order to produce a PowerPoint. And so it's kind of like PowerPoint native. And PowerPoint is, whereas Manus either produces images with Nano Banana or drafts essentially web pages and then converts those into PowerPoint. And there's some limitations to it. So part of it is that, but part of it is the skill that's written to produce that thing. And so if you think about the output of the AI tasks, prompts that you do, the quality of the output is going to be a function of a variety of things. We talked about this: instructions, knowledge, and tools, right? The knowledge is partially this concept of a skill. Okay. Now, skills can be shared across teams. Skills can be shared across organizations. So how that looks is, say, on the Claude side, there's this concept of organizational skills, right? Where, let's see, come on. And you're seeing some of the ACRE team skills. So maybe I don't have access to them. Well, I can see it on my settings, capabilities, skills. There we go. So there are organization skills. There are my personal skills. And that is one implementation. And so in this implementation, skills are limited either to the individual or the organization. Now, one of the reasons we built CRE agents is what we hear from a lot of people is like, hey, I don't have the time to build all this stuff. And so either we build for you in a very custom way, somewhat agnostic to the platform. But for those who just want an out-of-the-box solution, what we do here is we build, in essence, tasks for organizations. But as it relates to skills, what we do is, here, I've got 30 skills so far. These skills are shared across all CRE agents users. And so that's another, so you can imagine skills that are shared more broadly, or also you can just search the web for skill, let's say AI skills GitHub. And I can find people who have just developed skill libraries that I can use for different things. Spreadsheets is an example of one that may be interesting. Let's see. So this is OpenAI's spreadsheet skill. Or you build your own custom skills, so that's this concept of sharing skills across organizations when that makes sense. All right. So, why do skills matter? Look, if you're going to multiply your output, you need things that are repetitive, and that you can then trust that output. And this concept of skill and coding your knowledge such that you get a very consistent output is how we do that. Also, for the gray hair listening, and by the way, gray hair, you might be 5 years in and your hair gets gray. You have developed personal IP. And this is something I think a lot about, and I fear that too many of us have spent a career developing like this personal IP that doesn't live in the public domain. And you have to start asking yourself, how much of that personal IP do you just give away, whether to the company you work for or to the world? And how much of that do you encode in a way that gives you an edge? And so many of you know Michael Belasco. He's the co-founder at ACRE, and he runs a real estate private equity firm. And he has over 20 something years of career, like encoded some really valuable knowledge. And so right now he is building, in essence, an end-to-end automation solution for his business. And a lot of that knowledge is he's basically translating to an AI system. And we were having this conversation the other day. He's like, I don't want to give this away to anyone because it's so valuable for his business. And I struggle with that because if you follow ACRE, we started by just giving models away for free, and we tend to have this view, democratize knowledge, and so I still lean towards that. But Michael made a really good point. Like, if AI knows everything, what good are we for? Which and then I disagree, and I say, what are we good for? Judgment, relationship management. I'm not going to fly to London in an airplane without a pilot or two or three in the cockpit anytime soon. And so I'm certainly not going to make multi-million-dollar decisions purely with an AI, and he gets that. But anyway, you get the point. So either way, though, these skills for you who have developed some subject matter expertise can be your personal IP, can be quite valuable if you package them in the right way and you leverage them to that extent. That's why skills matter. Now, the reuse test. So this was just a quick test that I did. A skill: exclude one-time CapEx from stabilized NOI. Institutional investors use stabilized NOI to reflect ongoing earning power. So, and this presentation was created by Claude. I should have reviewed that. Should have been one-time OpEx from stabilized NOI. But the point is, there are certain like conventions that you might follow. So one convention would be, hey, when you're building to a stabilized NOI, make sure that all line items are durable and long-term. Any one-time items, exclude those. Whereas the prompt is a specific use case. It's a task. Whereas the skill spans tasks. Now, in terms of the anatomy of a great skill, we're going to look at one here in a moment. In fact, we'll build it using this professional standard, scope, methodology, output conventions, examples, and edge cases, like anatomy that I like for skills. You'll see this also in the ebook, so don't have to memorize this. But the point is, create your own structure for those skills that best encode your knowledge into the AI. And this just happens to be the anatomy that I like. Just some key principles for effective skills. Right altitude. So what I mean by that is you're constantly between this, how much latitude, flexibility do I give the AI versus how much structure do I want to give it? So let's take an amortization skill. In fact, I'll open one and I'll show it to you. 1 second here. Yeah, here we go. All right, so here's amortization schedule logic. And things like, okay, I want to define core inputs. That's important to me. I don't want my amortization tables to lack any of these inputs. And that's an altitude decision that I'm making here. I'm limiting some flexibility, but that ensures that I always have these inputs. Another one would be payment types. I'm limiting it to IO and amortizing payments, which I think is right. Period logic. Remember how I mentioned period 0? I always want to have that period 0. That's important to me. Otherwise, it will often start in period 1, and I always start in period 0. That's my closing period. That's where the loan funds. And so if I'm sitting on the lender side, that's a big outflow of cash. I'm on the borrower side. That's a big inflow of cash, and that's important to me. Period one through end of term. But then the flexibility that I give, you'll notice that I don't stipulate anywhere here whether what cells inside Excel to put any of this stuff. So I give that sort of flexibility. You'll notice, at least in this skill, I don't dictate formatting. I don't dictate structure. So this could be on one worksheet. This could be on multiple worksheets. So that concept of how much flexibility versus how much structure is going to come down to you. Now, why do you want structure? Structure produces a more consistent output. Flexibility allows the skill to do more things for you. So you go, well, why don't you give it like max flexibility? Well, because oftentimes is wrong. If you give it too much flexibility, it sometimes will go off the rails. Now, explain the why. This is a really powerful thing that I discovered in my prompts. Now, you want to keep it short, but giving a rationale for rules helps ground the AI in what that rule is. So explain the why, lead with examples. So providing some good examples, maybe some bad examples is helpful. Let's see if I included examples here. I didn't end up including examples in the logic because it wasn't necessary, but let me show you my Excel document guide. I guess I don't have any examples in that one. But oftentimes when you give examples, where I see examples being particularly helpful, actually, I'll show you this one here, location narrative. That would be one that has examples. So when I draft a location narrative for an IC memo, I have a very specific methodology that I follow for that. I'm sorry. I said so. A location narrative. I've very specific methodology that I want to follow, and in here, shoot, I didn't have a. Actually, I think assumptions. You can see that I haven't used. Did I do examples here? Yeah, there we go. So this is an example. So this is actually assumptions narrative. So if I'm drafting assumptions for an IC memo, I want it very specific. And then in this case, I did use some examples. So this is an example, a single paragraph narrative for something like RUBS. Stabilized RUBS income is underwritten at this amount, producing this amount annually and recovering approximately this. And so that would be an example that helps the AI, grounds the AI in what I want. And then I also gave an example of a 2-paragraph. And then in the skill, I had taught it when to use one single paragraph versus double paragraph. Keep it lean. So your context window, at least in 2026, is precious. So the shorter the skill, the better. I will say though, even if we get like unlimited context window, the more content you put into the skill, the more possibility that there's conflicts between either competing skills or your task instructions in the first place. And so if you have a task, a prompt, and then there's something in that prompt that conflicts with the skill, then you don't know which instruction it's going to follow. And so when you have this discipline of keeping your skill lean, you're less likely to have those type of conflicts. Show what not to do. Negative examples are helpful, and then write like a practitioner. Here's what I've found. If I am too, let's use the word programmatic. If my language is too much like an engineer in my skill, it will ultimately produce language that comes out that sounds like that. And so your skill should sound like what you want the output to be. And just a little trick, write like a practitioner. All right, let's look at this amortization schedule skill and see different outputs based on which skill we used. And it kind of gives you a sense of how this might work. So I'm going to start with that AI Edge, just a prompt. Okay, so again, got several windows here, so bear with me as I find it here. Or was it this one? Yeah. Okay, this one, I think. No. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll run the prompt again. So we have this AI Edge prompt, and right now there is no skill that's governing it. And so it's purely going to output based on just the prompt. We drop that in. So that's one example. Another example is, let's see here. Okay, I did one here. Yeah, this one. So in this case, this was governed by two skills and a prompt. And the prompt looks something like this. Let's grab it. Maybe I have to refresh here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, come on. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. I'm in the wrong. I'm sorry, y'all. There we go. Okay. So the prompt looks like this. It's going to take in either loan docs or a user prompt or a user specifying terms. It's going to extract from the loan docs 9 inputs and we'll then use those inputs. And you'll see here at the very top, it says learn the amortization schedule logic skill and learn the Excel document guide skill. And then it will use those two skills coupled with these instructions to produce something that looks like this. And this was my output here. It looks like this. Okay, now when I ran this test, I did not give it any inputs. And so one of the things in the Excel document skill is if there are missing inputs, or if you infer any inputs, highlight those in yellow. And that's kind of a convention I always use with my analysts. It's like, hey, if there's something that you're unsure of, highlight in yellow, maybe even add a note. And so it did that, see, and including added notes here. I like to have this do air checks. So it does some air checks. That's part of the skill, the Excel document skill. But this was not stipulated. So it made a decision to go vertical. And it also created this summary tab, which I had not specified. And I might go, okay, the summary tab is a bit overkill. And so maybe I'd modify the skill. So that's an example of two skills that ultimately produce a document that is, and I'm just starting on this, is probably 90% of the way there. And then I refine the skill. But now because I have the skill that produces the Excel formatting that I want, the Excel structure that I want, and the loan document that encodes, call it the logic, I could then use this skill across all sorts of different tasks, whether it's building one from scratch, whether it's modifying an existing amortization table, whether it's injecting an amortization table into an existing model. That's the power of that. Versus here, let's see, in for all. And we'll see this come out. This is only going to use these basic instructions, really with no skill. We have no idea. Oh, geez, just infer all and build it. It's for testing. All right, so let's have that run. While that's running, let's now actually build a skill together. And we're going to use Claude for this, as many of you, I think, use Claude. So let's go ahead. Here we go. Okay, so let's build a skill that encodes my method for underwriting property tax on a operating asset in the United States. And this will ultimately produce a skill that we can either add to Claude, or we could download ourselves and put into other platforms. And uh, everyone on this call has their own way of underwriting property tax. So it'll be interesting to see, how you all think about my method here. But okay, all right. So what Claude has, you might have noticed, Claude actually opened a skill which is create Claude skill. Okay, so it has its own skill to create skills, and that skill produces some step by step. And the first one is walk me through your approach. And so if I am looking at an asset, okay, and I'm underwriting property tax, the first thing I want to think about is I want to, let's call this establish the current tax position. Okay, that's the mill rate, that's the assessed value, that's the current tax bill. Okay, that's where I'm going to start. And to do that, what am I going to do? Well, I will browse and find the tax assessor record for the subject property. And by the way, one of the most efficient ways to create skills is as you're actually doing this, just narrate what you're doing into a some sort of transcription tool. There's all sorts of free apps that you can grab from the app store that will do this, and then you can take that transcript and give it to Claude or ChatGPT or any platform that you build on, and use that transcript to essentially encode or create this skill. But we're going to do it manually here. So the process: I browse, find the tax assessor record, calculate mill rate by taking what am I going to do? I'm going to by taking the current tax bill and dividing by assessed value. And then if not possible, actually, let's do also check against tax assessors like mill rate. I don't even know what you call it, but law published. Let's call that tax assessors published mill rates. Right. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's see. How do I go back? Okay, I can't keep. So then what we're going to do next? I first would establish the current tax position. The next thing I'm going to do, I don't know why it's not letting me. Format it the way I want. So I'm going to have to go like this. Okay. Second is I will determine the reassessment methodology of the jurisdiction. And that might look something like, do they reassess on sale? That would be the first question I'd ask. The next question I might ask would be, is the sale price public? Maybe how often do they reassess? Is this California? Right? Prop 13. And maybe we might ask, are there any abatements, maybe tax caps, exemptions, special taxing districts? When I worked at a big life co, we had this one guy, and he was the only person that didn't work in an office. Okay, and he lived in, I forget, I think it was Ohio, which we did not have an office in Ohio. And so every one of us was required to work out of some office, either the home office or one of the field offices. But this individual was one of the foremost experts on property tax in the United States. And because of that, he had a lot of leverage. And so he could pretty much dictate to a big $300 billion fund where he lived because his knowledge was so valuable. And so if he were to do this, I wish he was on the call. He could do this to a degree I never could. And so this is like my like Spencer back of the envelope property tax math that I do in my initial underwriting before during due diligence. We'll have a tax consultant do this. But if you're a tax consultant on the call, the knowledge that you have is so valuable when you encode it with AI. Okay, so are there any tax abatements? We'll call that good there. And now I've got to do this silly thing where I have to somehow do that just so I can get the formatting that I want. Let's go to 3. So what's the third thing? So in most states, in my experience, there's this concept of an assessment delta. And there's a few reasons why it occurs. Sometimes it's a lagging thing. It's because they assess based on a year or two prior to when the tax assessment occurs, you have some lagging effect. But I've also noticed that in a lot of jurisdictions, they intentionally assess at a value that is some haircut to market. And my guess is it's because it's to reduce the appeals or losing on appeal. That's my guess. I'm not a tax assessor, but I've found that there's generally this like assessment delta. And so I like to include that as one of my inputs to this analysis. And so I'm going to say estimate the assessment delta. And I'm going to say this is the standard delta in that jurisdiction between tax assessed value and call it market value. And how do we do that? There's a few, or actually, let's think about consideration. So the first consideration is jurisdiction norms. Is this common? And that's a tough one. And so let's do this. If possible, find 3 to 5 recent sale comps and their reassessment value post sale and identify what delta, if any, existed. Another way that you can do this is you can just simply have tax comps. So you find assets that sold, say, a year and a half ago, you look at what they sold for, and then you look at what they were reassessed this year, and you create that delta. And I could encode more details about that, but this is good enough for our exercise. The second is, so that's called jurisdiction norms. There's also a question around consider triggers or timing. If jurisdiction reassesses on sale and has public knowledge of that sale, look at assessed value versus sale price. That's another way. We could just simply say, okay, if they have all the data and yet they're assessing at some discount, might that be a signal to us? And I guess the third one might be, property type, residential versus commercial. And if you're sitting here listening to this, you're like, so Spencer, I do this totally different. That's okay. We're run. The point is, let's try our best to encode this. And I'm far from a property tax consultant or expert, but this is kind of my back of the envelope math that I might do. Let's remind, okay, sales comp assessed versus sale price ratio. Okay, that's like the comp concept that I mentioned before. All right, let's go to the next one. And for some reason now it does give me a 4, so that's good. So once we have this, now we need to calculate the stabilized annual property tax. And the formula that I use is underwritten value times um, let's see, let's call it the assessment delta times the mill rate as a percentage. I know that mill rates are measured in thousands, but I convert the mill rate to a percentage because it makes this math easier. And so then I might give, for example, $50 million underwritten value times a 90% assessment delta equals assessed value of 40, what's, geez, 45 million times 1% mill rate equals $450,000. Okay, and I give it an example. So I started by just giving it my methodology and a few other things. Include confidence level, propose methodology for that. Um, let's see. Make sure, let's see, either ask for the property tax record or use the web. Don't perform analysis without it. That would be called a guardrail. All right, so I just dumped in a bunch of my thoughts, and it's going to continue this conversation. This is a real clean methodology. Let me play it back. What I'm hearing is the sequence. This is one of the things I like about Claude is it's good at clarifying where I am, establish the current tax position, understand the jurisdiction's reassessment rules, estimate the assessment delta, calculate stabilized annual property tax, include a confidence level, hard rule, don't run the analysis without the tax record. A clarifying question before I draft on the confidence level, do you have a framework in mind already? Um, let's use high. I have all of the data, including comps. Medium, I have subject property data, but no comps. Low, I'm making educated guesses. I give it some confidence level. Perfect. That's intuitive. Now, if you're curious how Claude builds skills, you can find that online. So Claude Anthropic publishes their methodology, which differs slightly from my preference for this professional standards scope methodology, output conventions, examples, edge cases. In fact, in a second, I'll show you how I'll convert it to this. But for now, one more question before I draft. On the assessment delta step, when the AI can't find sale comps with the post, should it default to a specific assumption? By the way, the AI almost certainly won't be able to find comps. And so either you give it access to a comp database, or as part of the task prompt, you upload comps. It's not going to be able to browse the web and find comps. Now, you'll see that I said that because I don't have any other tool that Claude can use for this right now. It's one of the reasons we do CRE agents. It gives us the ability to actually create those sorts of tools. But so let's see. One more question on the, yeah, when I can't find sale comps, should it flag it as a gap? Um, don't flag it as a gap. Just include it in the confidence level. Ask the user often will upload comps as part of the prompt task. So we do this back and forth. By the way, any knowledge that you have, you can always just come to Claude. Let's build a skill. ChatGPT does the same thing. So if we come over here to ChatGPT and it's here and you click skills and you can click create new skill. Oops. And you have to, come on. And you have the option to create with a chat. That's what we're doing on the Claude side. You can create with an editor. That's something similar to what I was showing you on the CRE agent side. I use an editor for that. Or you can upload from your computer. And so if you have a skill that you built in Claude or I built in CRE agents, I can upload that now and put it into a ChatGPT environment. But here in Claude, we are just doing chat. Now it's building this, draft the property tax underwriting skill. If I open this, you'll see that it's creating a skill file that's based on its skill for creating skills. Here's the draft. Let me walk you through. It's got some structure, a few choices I made. You should gut check. So this is telling us, hey, I made some judgment calls without your input. I defaulted the assessment to 100%. I think that's probably fair. I added entity level transfers and recent construction or innovation as edge cases. That's interesting, right? We hadn't considered that. I kept mill rates as expressed as percentages per your example. I hadn't specifically said it, but because I gave it an example, it then inferred that I want to use mill rate as a percentage, and it drafts the skill. And if I'm in Claude, what you're going to see is this button, copy to your skills. I can click that and it will automatically take that skill and put it in my Claude skills. So now I have it there, property tax underwriting. See that? Let's go back. I also have, if I open it, the ability, if I want to, I can toggle this. This is markdown. It's a formatting here. And in this markdown now, I can click just the copy button. And I could copy this, say, into create with an editor, ChatGPT, paste it there, and then give it a skill name. And the skill name is this thing up top. And now I created, instructions are required. Oh, is there down there? Sorry about that. Wrong place. There's my instructions. And then I've got a description. What did I do wrong? Let's copy that. There we go. So I put the entire thing here, and then this is the actual description. Claude includes it in the skill. ChatGPT, I just put it into different boxes. Again, that's there. I'm going to delete this piece. So my instructions are that. So I now have this same skill in ChatGPT. I have it in Claude. I can download it. So click download, and it will download it as a skill.md file. And that can be used across in all sorts of different places. If I open it, it's going to look like this. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, it'll look like this. And I can use this skill, again, across platforms. And then let's try it. Excellent. Using that skill, create an amortization schedule for the following. I wish I had a loan doc I could drop in, but let's use, let's say, a $25 million senior loan, 10-year term, 30-year amort, 5 years of IO. Let's do 6% fixed. Let's do 6.5% fixed rate. No points. No. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Infer. Leave all other inputs as 0. And this is now my prompt. Okay, this is my prompt, and it will use the skill. It's a very rough prompt. That it will use the skill to produce an amortization schedule. Reading, okay, and notice it's also using its own Excel skill as well. And so in the same way that I showed you on the CRE Agents platform, I used an Excel skill and I used a loan amortization skill. Oh, shoot, what am I doing? This is a property tax. Shoot, sorry, y'all. Let's do this again. So I come up here, I'm gonna edit this, use the skill to perform a property tax analysis on the following property. And you all watching, you're like, what are you doing, Spencer? You just built a property tax skill and then you're doing an amortization too. And let's give it a South Dixie Highway, Miami, Florida, 33156. This is Crest at Pinecrest. And let's see what it does. It probably won't be able to browse and find the tax record in Dade County, but we'll find out. Let me follow the skill step by step. So here it is browsing the web. It's trying to find the tax assessor. It's doing its best. Great, I've confirmed the asset. Now I need the actual assessor record. So here it goes. Can you find it? Failed to fetch it here. Let's see, maybe it found it. It's using a third-party site, Property Shark. So this is where you get into, if you build it yourself. So let's say you built a property tax agent using Replit. You would find an API that would give you property tax records. That way you know for certain you're always going to have the property tax record that you need. You hopefully have access to sale comps, maybe your own database. And if you're building a Replit, and for those who are unfamiliar, this is one of our favorite just building tools, replit.com. Replit, in essence, creates apps that are hosted on Replit. So if you use Claude Code will generally code locally on your machine. Then you'll have to host that somewhere, and you'll have to set up separate databases, which Claude Code is far more powerful. But if you're just building internal tools for yourself, something like Replit is a much quicker implementation. And you could use that then to access APIs for all of the data that you need to ensure an optimal output. But here it goes. It's doing its best. Look how it's trying so diligently. Now I have much more context, and it's going to continue for a little while, and it may give up, or it may find the tax record. We'll find out here. Yeah, no results. Let me try a different approach, and it continues on, and I'll stop. What we do on the CRE agent side is we just have an API to every tax assessor record in the country, so then we don't have to deal with this. But okay, so that was underwriting. Call it some final comments, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you have. First one is when you build a skill, just like if you build an Excel financial model template, the first version will contain errors. It needs third-party feedback. So it may be members of your team, it may be friends, it may be the internet, whatever. With third-party feedback, it's going to be better. And you're going to want to then run that. So run a few things, kind of iterate and test, check the output, check for conflicts, and then just a quick one, check for bloat. But the broader point is testing and iterating, testing and iterating. And so at ACRE, we put out one of our early models called the All-in-One. It has been updated hundreds of times, and yet there are still people that find little tiny bugs or they find improvement opportunities. And so it is with your skills. You're basically managing now this thing that produces an output, and the quality of the output is a function of what you build. And the only time you get that is through testing and iterating. So our invitation to you, call it next steps. Find a repeatable task that you do. Identify the skill related to that task. Again, that's the methodology. That's your knowledge that you want to encode in that. Build the skill. We'll circulate the ebook. Feel free to use the ebook or to use Claude or ChatGPT. I like our ebook. To me, it's a little bit better than what Claude or ChatGPT's version of a skill is. And then test and iterate. And with that, you'll begin to encode your knowledge, and that's how you get a multiplier. That's one of the ways you get a multiplier effect with AI. Let me stop and answer questions that might come up here. In the meantime, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, good here. Where are these skills shared or stored that you create? Okay, so right now, most of my skills I have the luxury, I just store them in CRE agents. And then and quite a few or a number of you are CRE agents clients, you have access to those skills through your CRE agents platform. For others, what I would do is I would actually, every time I build a skill, I would download that skill.md file. I would rename it as a skill and I would store it in my personal library. I'm a little suspect of giving it to Claude or ChatGPT right now. I still feel like, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I still want to think that this knowledge that I've gathered over the years, I can somehow retain and leverage. And so I don't necessarily give it all to Anthropic or to OpenAI at this point. So that's where I store it. Yeah, Chris mentioned the agentic hotel GM. Chris, reach out to Joe. That's very much Joe's department. So if you're sitting on this call and you're like, hey, I want you guys just to build us something magical, reach out to Joe. Joe, how do they find you? Joe at SiriAgents.com, right?
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, Joe at SiriAgents.com. Perfect.
Yeah. There's some pretty magical things that Joe and the team are building. Okay, as a non-coder, what is GitHub and why is it needed? Yeah, Rob, I'm sorry, man. So GitHub is very much a nerdy tech place that they share code either with their team or sometimes, and it's like a place to store their code so that they can find it in the future and they can share it with others. And so they may share it with just their team, they may share it with the world. That's what GitHub is. And so then you have these nerdy tech guys that they then develop these AI things like skills. And so then they just default to, I'm going to share the skill on GitHub. For us non-tech people, we do not have a place where we share all these things. And so that's what email, I guess, is for. A great question. Oh, yeah, and then Tyler already answered that. Thank you, Tyler, for that. Yeah, okay, great. And Tyler also shared Claude's guide. So the ebook that I'm going to share is Spencer's iteration on Claude. So here's my issue with all of the OpenAI and Claude. They're all built for tech people right now. And so anytime you open up, they expect you to know what YAML is. They expect you to understand. Even the concept of prompting, like prompt engineering to me, is not a palatable term for people that are non-tech people. And so either you have to develop a tech vernacular or you use guides like what we're putting out that I hope is a bit more palatable for those of us who are not tech. Yeah, Chris asks, can you detail what LLMs you use for specific skills, tasks, and why? Again, one of the reasons why we built Siri agents to either build on behalf of people or to build for our, we call them professional clients, but is I want to be agnostic to a large language model. So while we don't today use any open weight models, once our clients get comfortable with this idea that GLM-5 can code as well as Opus 4.5 at 1/10 the cost, shouldn't we use that for tasks where I'm going to be doing some simple coding rather than spending $25 per output token on Opus 4.6? Right? I mean, so I am agnostic to large language model, and it depends on the week. GPT 4.4 came out last week. It's arguably better than Opus 4.6 on a lot of things. We're testing that right now for what we call our analysis model that runs our analysis tasks on Siri agents. I like Grok 3.1 Fast for anything that requires a little bit of thinking, but not a lot, and can produce text very quickly that I can trust. It's incredibly cost effective, and it's not an open weight model where people get uncomfortable about using and I say open weight model, we're really talking about almost all open weight models right now are Chinese models. And like it or not, in our country, some people are concerned about that, with good reason, I think. So it's going to depend on the week and the task, which large language model. Today, I think most people would say Opus 4.6 is still your coding model. And coding is if you're building a PowerPoint presentation, if you're doing Excel, if you're doing Word, those are generally created with code today in 2026. I still like ChatGPT, and it's GPT 5.3 is a much better writer. So if I'm writing emails, I'm writing location narratives, I see memos, I'm doing that sort of thing, I'm still using an OpenAI product for that. Grok is great for like current knowledge, should you need that. Although, you can use web search with really any of the models. And so, yeah, and then you get into other types of like non-large language models, and there's going to be different use cases. By the way, I like Gemini 3 Flash for vision right now, but that's okay. So will the slide deck be distributed? I'd be happy to distribute it. I think the ebook encapsulates everything that's in the slide deck in an easier to digest way. So when I'm creating a financial model from scratch, is a skill plus come together and build it? Yeah, it's a combination of skills for sure. If I tried to put the entire financial model in one skill, number one, from a modularity standpoint, like I want my investment cash flow module for development to be a specific skill, because that's going to encode things like S-curve methodology. And I don't want to complicate it with a methodology for how I handle reversion cash flows for condos, for instance. I mean, that's a completely different methodology. And so to produce a financial model, you'd have multiple skills. The tech, though, is not there. I can't just give it 10 skills, say, build this full apartment development model. It will be garbage when it comes out. And it's just the nature of where the technology is in February 2026. It's infinitely better, though, than where it was in February 2025. And I bet by 2027, it probably will be able to do that sort of thing. Asking if the session will be recorded. Yeah, we'll make sure to post this on the AI Edge. We have a free tier on the AI Edge, and we give these to the free tier access to that. So let's see. I'm going to stay on and answer the rest of the questions. You're welcome to drop. The next one is, if you create a skill with Claude, does that mean Claude has access to it by default? Yes. It doesn't mean that it always chooses the right skill. So that's one. That's why oftentimes I like in my prompt, my task, to specifically call out the skill. That way I ensure that it uses that skill to perform that task. But yeah, it does have access to all of them. Brian asks, I'm new to underwriting. Should I start with using the all-in-one model for underwriting and then use AI to supplement that skill? Okay, yeah. So a longer answer. The first answer is, think of skills like the methodology long division. Okay, so before you use AI, think of AI as the calculator. Before I'm going to use the calculator to perform long division, I need to learn how to do long division by hand. And that's important because knowing how to do long division by hand therefore allows me to do long division with a calculator and know whether the calculator is doing it right or wrong. The skill is how I teach the calculator to do long division, such that when the calculator does long division, I know that it did it correctly. From a underwriting standpoint, new to underwriting, you're going to want to learn how to do it first. You're going to want to learn the skill itself, you personally. Once you have that, then you can use a tool like the all-in-one, and you'll know what the all-in-one is doing. And once you know what the all-in-one is doing, you can then have an AI help you do it. So that's how I would answer that one. Great question. Now, on ChatGPT, skill the same as creating a GPT? Okay, this is a really good question, Joseph. So thank you for asking this. So I would think of a custom GPT as a skill that can only be used in a single conversation, and you can only use one of them. And I would imagine the concept of custom GPTs go away, because a custom GPT is like the skill coupled with the task, and it can only go in one place. It's really limited. Skills, you can have multiple skills in one task. You can use multiple skills across various tasks. You can inject skills at a time where it matters most. And so I would, for instance, at ACRE, we have moved all of our custom GPTs to skills so that they're a bit more flexible. Yeah, great question. How do you get the PDF? We'll send that via email. You'll see the link to that. If you're on the AI Edge community, you're going to see it pop up when we share this workshop. Otherwise, you're going to see an email for those who attended. And then Michelle said thank you, and thank you for joining. So appreciate you joining our March workshop. We'll do another one of these in April. If you have ideas for what you want to chat through as it relates to AI for April, let me know. You want us to build something for you, Joe at CREagents.com is your guy. Otherwise, look forward to seeing everyone in April.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Spencer.